This one's a bit ridiculous. Dried
Well,
fish.
now you marketed well, so now I you have my attention.
Dried fish store. That's it. There are 4 characters to express 3 words in English, which is normally the other way around. But it's if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. That's the English equivalent, which I much prefer. It's a much funnier turn of phrase, anyway. A man went to borrow some money from a friend, but the friend told him he could not lend any until the end of the month. The man was upset and told his friend that on the way over, he had seen a carp writhing in a deep, dried-up pond. The carp begged him to bring water immediately, but the man said he would bring some back after he had seen his friend. The carp replied that in that case, the man had better look for him in the dried fish shop because it would be too late. Now, said the man to his friend, you're doing the same thing to me.
Yeah.
Well, in this setup, by the way, this is me taking umbrage with a proverb too literally. He neglected the fish's suffering, so why should his friend acknowledge his? You know, the person with resources, he's there to borrow money or whatever, and he's not able to look after himself, but his friend is. Is he not like the man to the carp? There's a sort of additional layer here that perhaps isn't touched on, that, well, the man's actions have almost defined how he should be treated because he acted in that way on the way there. Although it does sound like the fish was probably a made-up story from the man. I'm really being too pedantic here. But no, the interesting turn of phrase to communicate the notion of trying to basically get something out of nothing.
Yeah.
Dried fish store. I don't see it catching on in English.
I think what we are saying, which is somehow equivalent, is that when it comes especially to fishermen, is that when they throw hooks without bait, hoping that the fish are going to bite the hook.
I suppose that's a good phrase, isn't it? It's almost...
They cast empty nets in the hope that
looking for something for nothing, yeah.
Yeah.
Although you can't, with a net, it's much easier to fish without bait. But that's... you can get a lure, do the best of both. Enough about my fishing techniques here.
Josh goes on a rant against Proverbs. Yeah.
Yeah, go fishing. Don't listen to Proverbs. Actually, wait until the end. Extra flute, make up numbers. They are just there to make up numbers. A make weight are the equivalent. So I imagine what it's trying to get at here, before I read the description out, is that someone who's just there to fulfill a quota rather than...
Okay.
As in, they're adding another flautist, as the term goes.
The more the merrier.
Well, it's not that. It's saying that they're unnecessary. It's saying that they're only there to make up the numbers. They're not actually adding anything to the...
Okay, so they have
music.
The pre-established quotas that they have to be filled.
You've not heard of the flautist quota before?
Is there a sort of managerialist class that says that you need to fill a number?
I'm pretty sure Confucius outlined in great detail how many flutes you need.
Yeah.
No, obviously I'm joking. So
same. Sorry.
The context for this is the legalist philosopher Han Fei from 280 to 233 BC told this story. A yu is traditional Chinese wind instrument. King Zhuan of Ji particularly loved the music of yu and assembled an orchestra for his entertainment. A poor man saw his chance to get free food and accommodation by infiltrating the orchestra, even though he couldn't play. The king only liked ensemble pieces, so the man got away with his deception. However, when King Zhuan died and his son took over, the man was in trouble. The new king only liked solo pieces and ordered each musician to play in turn. Rather than be found out, the man ran away. So he was playing the flute for a free meal.
Yeah.
So that context makes sense, though. And the phrase is far better, I think. So it translates far better.
Play the flute for a free lunch.
That's the literal lesson. If you want free food, play the flute for a Chinese emperor. But I don't understand why the man didn't learn to play the flute in the meantime. By the sounds of it, he had plenty of time to learn, so I don't really feel sorry for him.
Yeah, I mean, it has to do with laziness.
I'm sure that's not the point of it, but saying that you can get away with something if there are large numbers is why,
People hiding in the crowd or something.
yeah, well, it's why pickpockets always hang around tourist hotspots, isn't it?
Yeah. And also there's a loss of individuality in crowds, and loss of the notion of responsibility and the sense of being responsible, because somehow you outsource responsibility to the crowd. The crowd could do all sorts of bad things. When it comes to it doing something bad, a lot of individual members of that crowd may be saying, no, I didn't do it personally, the others did.
Mm-hmm. And the man is effectively stealing from the emperor as well. So the amount of moral condemnation involved there would surely be much higher from a Chinese context. So here's a very long one. Long-legged wolf and short-legged wolf make mischief. To be partners in crime or to be in cahoots together is the equivalent in English. Yeah. And the context is, for this saying to work, we have to believe that there are two types of wolf. The lang, which is the normal wolf with long front legs and short hind legs, and the bay, a strange variant with front legs shorter than its hind legs. The beasts were out hunting one day and came to a sheep pen with a high fence. The lang stood on the shoulders of the bay, which stretched up upon its hind legs. The lang then reached out with its long front legs and caught a lamb for each for dinner.
That's more of a saying, though. I think this answers the question we had before, whether these are just moral teachings or they are a combination of moral teachings and sayings.
Well, it almost sounds like, it's very reminiscent of Aesop's fables as well. It's got anthropomorphized animals cooperating together with weird legs and human-like traits. But obviously the sort of message here is you work well together. It's like a turn of phrase to talk about how people can cooperate in a complementary way with one another. And I suppose that's fairly self-evident in the world, isn't it? That there are people that work well together because they have complementary traits. I'm not sure whether people with long legs and short legs necessarily work well together. I suppose if they're going shopping and you've got to reach a high or low shelf, there's some benefit to it, I suppose. So the next one is gentleman on the roof beam. And that the sort of translation is the thief or a housebreaker.
Gentleman in the roof.
Gentleman on the roof beam. Roof beam as well. So I think a roof beam, if I'm not mistaken, is in a sort of traditional Chinese house, is the big beam from one end of the roof to the other, sort of going perpendicular to the length of the house. And it says, story is told by the later Han scholar Chen Shi, who lived at the end of the 2nd century. He was sitting in his house with his sons when he noticed a thief hiding up in the roof beams. He pretended not to see him at first, but turned the subject of discussion with his sons to life and work. He praised his sons for all being hardworking and conscientious, but went on to say they would meet some people who, although not bad in themselves, turned to crime because they did not like working. At this, he pointed to the thief in the rafters and called him down and gave him money to go away and set himself up a business. I don't know.
This is uber weird.
Yes, I think he's teaching his children a moral lesson, is what's going on here.
Okay, so wait, there's a thief, an aspiring thief. Who did...
Well, my thought was that he would get the thief to surrender because he's shaming the thief by saying, we're hardworking, but there are some people that don't like to work hard. So that the thief would leave of his own volition and he wouldn't have to go up to the rafters to deal with him. Thief. It sounds like it, but to set up a business. But maybe he's...
So he set him on the right path.
Yes. Yeah. So I suppose, although the sort of idiomatic meaning isn't translated, the sort of context here is that sometimes putting people on the right path will benefit them far more than it's inconvenienced you. That's what you can kind of read into this.
Yes.
Because I thought he was going to rely on morally shaming the man down from the roof beams, but apparently that wasn't the case. I would have kind of preferred it, actually. It's like, morally shame your enemies into submission. That should be in Art of War, shouldn't it? Shame them into doing...
Yeah, but actually, the burglar got what he wanted.
Yeah, that's true. And I personally, if I found someone in my rafters, I wouldn't give them money.
Yeah, I mean, what's the moral of the story here? That you should pay people who try to steal from you.
I'd give them a few new orifices in the form of wounds for intruding on my property. In the Firm household, we've got castle doctrine, all right? You don't trespass on our rafters if I had them. So here's another one. Loyang paper expensive.
Sorry, could you please repeat?
Loyang, which is a place, and paper expensive. That just sounds like broken English, doesn't it? Spoken by a Chinese man. Paper expensive. A bestseller, selling like hotcakes.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the equivalent.
Yeah.
So Loyang in Henan province is one of the 7 ancient capitals of China. Living there in the 3rd century was a famous writer called Zhu Si. He decided to write a history of the capital cities of the 3 kingdoms. Other writers mocked him and said it would never sell. Nonetheless, Zhu Si stuck to the task. When the book was finished, it became hugely popular.
So Juicy was the bestseller author?
Zhu Si, not Juicy.
Okay.
Everyone wanted to own a copy of the book. In those days, the only way was to buy paper, brushes and ink, and make a copy for oneself. So many people did so that the price of paper in Loyang shot up.
Yep.
That's pretty self-evident, the moral messaging here.
For economists.
Or invest in paper.
Yeah.
No. The message is that you pursue what you think is valuable despite your detractors, right? And that seems to be implicit in there. Perhaps I'm reading into it, but that seems to be an integral part of it. I think the expensive paper it's not, buy low, sell high. It's not, Warren Buffett giving advice, because of course the writer hadn't invested in paper by the sounds of it. Yeah,
he could sell his book on an economy of scale. So if you wanted to...
You should hire like a sweatshop of people to write out his book, and you can say, this is my approved version with no mistakes in the absence of intellectual property rights. Thank you for watching that clip from my series Contemplations. If you want to sign up to the website for £5 a month, you can access that series, which comes out 1 p.m. every Saturday. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.